Welcome to another odd episode of the Show. We are two geeks who talk about everything. My name is Aaron, and I'm joined by no one, as it turns out, this week, which is why I said it's an odd episode. And um, really, it just means that I'm one geek who is going to try and fill some time talking about some things. This is where I'm glad that I've been keeping a blog for the last, I don't know, 18 years, give or take, because it gives me plenty of things to look back on and potentially turn into episodes of this podcast when I'm stuck by myself. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find a co-host this week. Landon is traveling, and my go-to guest co-hosts have been busy this week as well. So um, it happens. It happens. It's happened once before, and I'm not sure really how that episode went, where it was just me talking about movies I'm looking forward to this year. I've not seen any of those movies yet, by the way. Uh, it's hard going to the movie theater when you've got an anxious dog that won't stop crying every time you leave the house. But anyway, that's not what this is about. We're going to try a couple of things this week. So we'll have this episode today and then another episode on Saturday where, again, it'll just be me. Today, I'm looking back at a series of blog posts that I did several years ago, which actually feels like a very long time ago now, um, about the dateability of Disney princesses. Now, ask anyone, even a guy, who their favorite Disney princess is, and there's a good chance they'll have an answer for you. And chances are they'll have a very well thought out answer. According to the official Disney Princess homepage, there are currently 11 Disney princesses in their lineup, I believe. I haven't looked up that statistic anytime recently. But each of these fictional animated characters shares the common thread of being featured in one or more films. Each was created to have her own unique personality, and these unique personalities have made it possible for people to choose who their favorites are over the years. So, how do people choose a favorite? Is it how they look, what dress they're drawn in, their singing ability, willingness to frolic with tiny woodland creatures? I don't know. But as a single guy, and this, I'm going to try to make this not sound creepy. I I'm looking at these young ladies in the light of, okay, should the princes that are, trying to win their hearts really be fighting that hard for them? Uh just a little guide to some of these princesses. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire list. And my list does include princesses who are not official Disney princesses. And I will argue on some of them too that some of the official Disney princesses should not be on the list because, well, they're not princesses. I'm looking at you, Mulan. Uh, anyway, we'll see how much time we've got to get through this list, and if we're able to make it through half of the Disney princesses, I'll be happy. And if it seems like people have enjoyed this episode, I'll come back and do the rest at some point. I had a fun time, speculating about these fictional characters if they existed in the real world. Um, some of them I'm thankful they don't. All right, so here we go. We're going to start at the very beginning. Very good place to start. Snow White. Snow White, the very first Disney princess. So everyone knows who Snow White is. Am I right? If you haven't seen that Disney classic, there's a good chance you saw one of the two movies that told her story a few years back. There was Snow White and the Huntsman, which was probably more for the Huntsman than for Snow White. And then there was Mirror Mirror, which was actually pretty decent. Uh, there's also the TV show Once Upon a Time that put a modern spin on things, including the character of Snow White and Prince Charming. So what do we know from the first Disney princess, or what do we know about the first Disney princess? According to Christopher Finch's The Art of Walt Disney, From Mickey Mouse to the Magic Kingdoms, Snow White is a 14-year-old princess whose parents are dead. Now, this magic mirror claims that she's the fairest in the land, whatever that means. Turns out that's enough to set off her psychotic stepmother in a jealous, homicidal rage. So, Snow White had to run away from the castle to become a housekeeper for a group of miners. This isn't much of a change for her since the queen was using her as slave labor anyway. And she's cleaning the castle steps and singing into a wishing well. I mean, this is just what the princess does. Now, should you date her? No, absolutely not. For one thing, she's only 14. I don't think that's ever mentioned in the movie, but it's in a book that chronicles the history of Disney animation. So that means that someone somewhere made a decision to make Snow White a 14-year-old girl. That's just way too young. Also, that information really paints the queen in a much more evil light. Who tries to murder a 14-year-old girl? Why are you jealous of the looks of a 14-year-old child? But let's pretend she's old enough to date. Okay. She lived with 7 dudes at the same time. All right. That denotes a questionable morality at best. It may have been completely platonic, but still, 7 guys just seems like too much. Add to the fact that some of her best friends appear to be birds and rodents. It's it just seems sketchy to me. They help her clean house. The birds and the rodents help her clean house. That doesn't scream clean to me. No. What is she doing? Taking produce from a strange old lady anyway. This old woman just shows up at the dwarf's cottage. This ugly old hag in black hoodie. I mean, these old ladies, they don't just go reverse trick-or-treating in the middle of the forest. That's not how it works. And even if they did, you don't accept apples from those women. All right. You only take candy that's still in the wrapper. I learned that on Halloween. All right. You got to take it when it's still in the wrapper. That way you're certain it hasn't been tampered with. They didn't shove a razor blade in there or dip it in some kind of poison that's going to make you fall asleep. All right. Prince Charming, he should move on. Okay. That's what we're going to do now. Because we're moving on to the next Disney princess in chronological order. That's Cinderella. It's another tragic story of a poor little rich girl raised in an aristocratic home. She lost her mother at a young age, which, I mean, don't they all? Dad felt that she needed a mother figure in her life, so he remarried and brought a couple of stepsisters into the mix as well. Now, I've got to ask, where did her father meet this woman? Did she just pretend to be nice until the old man died? Because, as we all know, Lady Tremaine forced this girl into slave labor, taking a page from Snow White's stepmother's playbook. Off topic. Why didn't either of these girls become Batwoman? I mean, they've got tragic death of both parents in their origin stories. Never mind. Those parental deaths did not come at the hands of an unnamed, faceless mugger on the streets of Gotham. I just answered my own question. Anyway, luckily, Cinderella had a fairy godmother that decided to give the girl a magic date night with the prince. Apparently, the powers that be in the kingdom decided it would be a good idea to find him a wife by throwing a ball. Think of it as a really truncated season of The Bachelor with less syphilis. Unlike Snow White, Cinderella was not born into royalty. Nobility, sure, but she's not born a princess. Spoiler alert, she marries into it, giving her that happily ever after that the princesses all seek. Should you date her? I'm going to say no to this one as well. While she is noticeably older than Snow White, she still has that issue of consorting with vermin. While the mice of the sprawling mansion seem to be fantastic seamstresses, I'm not sure I'd trust them to put together a proper dress. What's worse, she talks to the mice and they talk back. Someone may have some issues with hallucinations. This becomes more apparent when a fairy godmother magically appears and turns her rags into a gown and a pumpkin into a coach. Assuming the fairy godmother's magic was real, Cinderella relies a bit too much on that magic to make her happily ever after come true. Although she and the stepsisters are the only ones we see vying for the prince's affections. That being the case, Cinderella is the only logical choice, with or without The Glass Slipper. Okay. Moving on, Aurora, Sleeping Beauty. I'm going to admit, this was one of my favorites when I was a kid. Growing up, I loved watching this movie. I could watch it over and over again. And maybe it's because they did a lot to flesh out the villain, Maleficent, this time around. She wasn't just some power hungry, you know, vicious, you're prettier than me, so I'm going to kill you kind of villain. She seemed really like a cool bad guy, right? Look, I don't want to get into it here. I'm not a big fan of Angelina Jolie's Maleficent film. I mean, I thought she did a great job, but okay. My problem is with Maleficent's modern characterization. I don't like it when modern storytelling feels the need to make the audience feel sorry for the villain. It works sometimes, but don't take a classic villain who had no motivation for being evil other than the fact that she was just plain evil. We need to stop looking for reasons why evil exists and just acknowledge that it exists. Stop pestering me about this. I said I wasn't going to get into it here. Where was I? Right. Aurora. She doesn't get a lot of screen time. It's supposed to be her movie. Seriously? She got more screen time in Maleficent, the movie about Maleficent. She's only around as a speaking character for the middle third of the film. At the beginning, she's an infant. For most of the end, she's asleep. How could I possibly judge whether or not she's worth dating based on a minimal exposure to the character? One can draw a lot of conclusions from her few minutes on screen. So we ask the question, should you date her? Probably not. No. Don't get me wrong. She's cute and all. She's got more of a rustic appeal than the previous princesses had. It helps that she was raised in a cabin in the woods away from her royal palace. But that's an issue in itself. She's got family she doesn't know. That's going to cause a significant identity crisis when she goes back home for her 16th birthday. Also, she's only 16. Also, she's another one that talks to animals. I'm starting to think it's almost understandable to have conversations with these woodland creatures, though. Snow and Cindy were slaves, so they didn't get a lot of social time. Aurora only hangs out with three old women. I'd probably find myself talking to mice and squirrels, too. Throw all that out, though. She's apparently has a problem with narcolepsy. She had Prince Philip get married, or excuse me, she and Prince Philip get married. They settle into their own palace, and Philip might be feeling a little frisky, as husbands sometimes do. All you ever hear is from Aurora, not tonight, dear. I'm tired. Red flag, Phil. Red flag. All right, coming up next, we have a princess who is not an official Disney princess, but she should be. This is Leia Organa, Princess of Alderaan, general in the resistance against the First Order. You know who I'm talking about. I know. Again, Leia isn't technically a Disney princess, but here's the thing. Leia is a part of the Star Wars universe, which is now owned by Disney. Leia is a princess, ergo, Leia is a Disney princess. Just because she isn't part of the official princess lineup does not make her any less worthy of being called a Disney princess. If you're unfamiliar with the story of Princess Leia, please let me know what rock you've been living under for the past, I don't know, 40 some years. Leia's story is one filled with action, adventure, civil war, outer space, and scruffy looking nerf herders. You can catch her history by watching the Star Wars saga, beginning with 1977's A New Hope. When we first meet Leia, she is captured by Darth Vader, baddest man in the whole dang galaxy. But we quickly learn that Princess Leia is no damsel in distress. Sure, as the story goes, she's the catalyst for getting Luke and Han to storm the Death Star to save her. But once they put a plan to break her out into motion, she quickly takes charge. She's a high ranking leader of the rebellion against the evil empire, and as we find out in the later, sequel trilogy, she is a force to be reckoned with. See what I did there? All right, should you date her? For the first time, I'm going to say yes. Now, as mentioned above, she is a high ranking leader of the Rebel Alliance, which is instrumental in bringing down the first galactic empire. Sure, The Force Awakens tells us that the empire only fell to give way to the First Order, which may or may not be worse than Palpatine's rule. And I mean, I know it all turned into Palpatine's thing anyway, but that has nothing to do with Leia's leadership abilities. Also, she managed to tame Han Solo, a notorious smuggler and a heartless scoundrel, if ever there was one. And it works because they're both equally arrogant about their feelings for one another. Whenever one says, I love you, the other responds with, I know. Pretty bold. Sure, she kissed her brother, not a peck on the cheek. It was a full on lip lock, but there are several factors that you need to consider before writing her off as incestuous. For one thing, she only kissed Luke in an attempt at making Han jealous. It worked, by the way. Secondly, she had no idea that Luke was her twin brother at the time of the kiss. We had no idea that Luke was her twin brother at the time of the kiss. Heck, I'd be willing to bet real money that even George Lucas didn't know that Luke was her twin brother at the time of the kiss. I know there are diehard fans who will claim that Lucas had this whole thing figured out from the word go, but those are the same optimistic fools that probably think writers of Lost had the whole series planned out from pilot to finale. Think you're right. So, gentlemen, you could do a lot worse than Alderon's last princess. Who else could pull off a gold bikini while assassinating a giant slug gangster? Moving on, we have another princess that doesn't make the list. Her name's Eileen, and I hope I'm saying that right. It's been a long time since I've seen The Black Cauldron. So yeah, like Leia, she is not considered a Disney princess, but unlike Leia, Eileen is a princess who actually appeared in a Disney-produced animated film, just like all of the official Disney princesses. So why isn't Eileen considered an official Disney princess? Well, to answer that question, I think we really need to take a look at the film in which she appeared. Now, as I said before, she is in The Black Cauldron. In 1985, Walt Disney Pictures was proud to release its 25th animated film, The Black Cauldron. And kids, things got dark. See, somewhere in the early 1980s, the suits at Disney felt that it was important to get less fairy tale-y and more Heart of Darknessy with their lineup of films. This is easily seen in releases like The Watcher in the Woods, Return to Oz, and One Magic Christmas. Sure, you can argue that One Magic Christmas has a nice happy ending, but that's only because Santa Claus goes back in time and changes history so that Mary Steenburgen's husband isn't killed in a botched bank robbery. But you've got to give me Return to Oz. That junk is just the stuff of childhood nightmares. Landon and I are actually going to be talking about this coming up soon, so stay tuned on that one. I gotta stop getting off on these tangents. Anyway, this isn't an essay about the dark days of Disney, though that would make for a pretty clever episode, I think. This is about Princess Eileen, whom you've probably never heard of unless you've actually watched The Black Cauldron. You should. I feel like it's an underrated gem in Disney's lineup. Aside from being Disney's 25th animated feature, it had the distinguished honor of being Disney's first animated feature to be rated PG by the Motion Picture Association of America. That, kids, is due to the film's depiction of the villain's creation of an undead army. A villain who, in the end, is devoured by a tunnel of fire and blood. And really, it could have received a much more mature rating had the animators not decided to cut out several violent and or explicit scenes. I won't go into details on that. You can research it yourself. Wikipedia is amazing, BT dub. All right. It's a good movie. I've seen it a few times in my life. I actually didn't see it for the first time until I was in college. Being PG, it wasn't the kind of movie that my parents would take me to see at the age of 5. And since I didn't see it in the theater, it wasn't out. It wasn't one that that my sister and I were hounding our parents to buy when it finally came out on VHS. That's what we had before DVDs. That's what we had before Blu-ray and digital. But it is a good movie. It has a great story. It is beautifully animated. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor, check it out. It is on Disney Plus now. Now, back to Island Queen. Should you date her? I barely even touched on the kind of character that she is. When the princess is introduced to the audience, she's making her escape from the Horned King's dungeons when she bumps into Terran. That's the film's hero. They join forces and escape together with Fluter. I had to look up the spelling on that one. It's so weird. She later volunteers to accompany Terran on his quest to destroy the Black Cauldron before the Horned King can get his skeletal hands on it. Knowing those things about her, I'd say yes, that's the kind of woman a guy should want to date. She is brave and independent, not waiting around for a knight in shining armor to save her from the evil villain, but she's quite young. At least that's how she's depicted in the movie. According to the synopses of the novel series on which the Black Cauldron is based, Eilonwy and Terran end up married. So there's that. All right. I'm going to make time for one more before we wrap it up. And then again, if this is something that you, our audience, enjoys, I'll come back and I'll do the rest of the list. But we're gonna wrap things up with the first princess from Disney's Renaissance, and that would be Ariel, the Little Mermaid. Right. This was one of my favorites, and is the film that is responsible for beginning the Disney Renaissance, as I've already said. Uh, and the Renaissance, this is what continued through 1999 with Tarzan and Fantasia 2000. This is the first new Disney animated feature that I remember seeing in the theater. I had seen Disney films in the theater before. Disney was for a long time on board with the re-releasing of their animated movies in theaters, like every decade or so. It was like, we're going to release it once a generation, and then we're going to put it back in the vault. And then VHS started being a thing, and DVDs, and then they started releasing everything, and yeah, the vault is a thing. But seeing them on the big screen was a big deal. So I had seen Snow White and Sleeping Beauty in the theater as a young child, but when the Renaissance hit, there would be no more re-releasing, excuse me, of those films. Unless, of course, they can come up with some way to make it a gimmick, like offering a third dimension and charging an extra $5 a ticket. Excuse me, make that an extra $10 a ticket. Yeah. Wow. So The Little Mermaid was new in my childhood. It probably really introduced me to the Disney animated musical. For the first time, we have a princess who has a very strong personality. She's assertive and rebellious, and it gets her into a whole lot of trouble, which is probably a good thing. Otherwise, it would have been a boring movie. Ariel is a collector of random surface world items and happens to fall in love with a handsome prince. Don't they all? Big question. Should you date her? Absolutely not. And I don't want you to think that I'm being negative with the ladies of the official Disney Princess lineup, because so far I have been. I was positive with Leia and Ilanwi. I, did I say that right? I keep getting it wrong. But they're not official yet. We should start a petition. Anyway, I like Ariel. I really do. She has a fantastic singing voice, but she was willing to sacrifice her greatest asset to a sketchy sea witch. So right off the bat, you know her decision-making skills are pretty poor. And she makes this decision based on the fact that she's fallen in love with a human prince. No, Ariel, that's not love you're feeling. You're 16. Your body is changing, and these are hormones you're feeling. It's not love. It's more of a lustful infatuation. Argue for love at first sight if you want. You just can't fall in love with a man you've seen for approximately 3.5 minutes from a distance dancing and playing a snarfblat on a ship. This doesn't make any sense. Also, this is a big one and could open the door for some real need for psychological analyses. She's a hoarder. I know I called her a collector in a little while back, but I was being nice. Have you seen that trove of hers? Who needs 20 thingamabobs? I mean, really. And it's never enough. In a direct quote from Ariel's anthem, Part of Your World, she says, "You want thingamabobs? I got 20, but who cares? No big deal. I want more." Prince Eric, look out. You could give her the world, and it will still not be enough. It may seem simple to give her a lifetime supply of dingle hoppers with which she can brush her hair, but do you really want a palace full of useless forks? And again, I feel the need to bring up the age issue. As I mentioned before, she's 16. Sure, that probably means she's old enough to date, but she is just 16 and she's kind of a delinquent. Why is she signing contracts as a minor? I get it. She's a real princess. She's the possible heiress to the seven seas, though, as the youngest of seven, she's not inheriting anything. But where's her mother? As the youngest of Triton's daughters, there's a good chance she never had much of a maternal influence in her life. With only an angry merman to raise her and her six sisters, she's bound to have some serious daddy issues. All right. I'm gonna like I said, I'm wrapping it up with Ariel. That's gonna be the last one I hit on this list, which is a shame because Belle's my favorite, and she's next. But you know, again, if y'all want to hear more of this, we've got maybe half the list that we've done, and we can go through the rest because we still haven't hit on. We got Belle, we got Tiana, we got Pocahontas, we got Rapunzel, the Frozen girls, Moana. I mean, the list just goes on and on. And I dare say it can be entertaining to find out what I think about each one of them. I'm not saying I'm hilarious. I'll let somebody else say that. But if you want to hear more of this Disney princess stuff, let us know. Let me know in the comments. Uh, Drop a like, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you'll know whenever we have something new on the show, and also share this with your friends. All right. If you are getting something out of this, if you think it's funny, if you think it's informative, uh, well, I'm speaking for Landon because he's not here, but we would both love to have more folks listen. So if you enjoy it, maybe your friends will enjoy it. Maybe you've got family who would enjoy it. I don't know. I don't know your family, but I'd like to. So join in the conversation. Let us know, what do you think about this list of Disney princesses? Um, you know, what do you think? Would you consider them dateable if they were real live human beings? It's open for debate. So be sure to leave a comment when and if you can. All right. Next time we're gonna do something a little bit different. We're gonna do a sort of a question sheet kind of deal that will allow you, our viewers and listeners, to get to know me a little bit better. And I figured that'll work because I'm the only one here. So until then, have a great whatever it is, wherever you are.